Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, celebrating the holiday with fresh local produce, quality meats, and seasonal favorites. Shop in-store or let Safeway do the shopping this holiday season with free curbside pickup using the Safeway app.
Over the weekend, some of the best skiers on the planet carved up Beaver Creek for the Alpine Ski World Cup, and a few Coloradans were in the mix, chasing their Olympic dreams. The fresh snow that fell during the weekend made for some great racing. But if you were just trying to go up the mountain, yeah, those perfect ski conditions probably felt a lot more like a white-knuckle drive. I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel.
And I'm Bazi Kanani. Coming up, it's been the season for major drug busts.
You have lately just huge amounts of it that have been trafficked into Colorado in particular.
Why here? It has to do with our infrastructure.
Then, an update in the fight over how high schools handle trans students in sports.
CHASA doesn't keep data on transgender athletes. So far, all we've had are anecdotes.
Plus, moose are mighty big eaters, which led to a question.
I was curious as to what environmental impact moose might have made.
The answer in this week's Colorado Wonders.
It's Monday, December 8th. Here's the news in Colorado today.
Yes, all of this was found here recently. A storage locker packed with more than 1 million fentanyl pills, 24 pounds of cocaine netted in a traffic stop, a half ton of methamphetamine seized in the course of a 2-year investigation. Colorado has racked up some eye-popping drug bust numbers lately. CPR's Ava Kian joins us now to connect the dots on why the state seems to have so much drug trafficking activity. Hi, Ava.
Hi, Bazi.
You've reported on multiple major drug seizures in just the last month, and you learned that Colorado is an epicenter for these busts. Why is that?
Yeah, it's felt a little nonstop. I covered 2 record-breaking busts in the past month where, like you mentioned, law enforcement found 1.7 million fentanyl pills in a Highlands Ranch storage unit and also seized over 1,000 pounds of meth after a years-long investigation. And then there was that big cocaine bust on I-25 near Trinidad. So, Bazi, there's one reason for these huge amounts. They were being moved through Colorado.
Why here?
Well, we're right at the crossroads of 2 major transportation routes for cartels. You have I-25 running north-south and I-70 going east-west.
So basically, a lot of the drugs that get moved across the country may have to pass through here.
Yes, and law enforcement agencies have identified 2 big criminal groups responsible for most of it, the Mexican Jalisco and Sinaloa cartels. Matthew Stoneberger is an agent with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, and he said fentanyl is especially present in Colorado because it can be mass-produced and packed into small pills, which are easily transported and concealed in things like pill bottles.
Also, you have lately just huge amounts of it that have been trafficked into Colorado in particular. So we've seen large quantities of it.
It sounds like good news that huge amounts of illegal drugs are being found before they can get to people who could be harmed by them. Ava, are these major drug busts likely to make a difference in the long fight against these type of drugs?
If the seizures are making a positive impact, the effects are yet to be seen. In Denver, at least. Law enforcement agents believe that taking any amount of drugs off the streets will save lives. But they also told me that cartels will always find another way to transport drugs. I talked with David Oleski, an agent with the Rocky Mountain Division of the Drug Enforcement Agency.
The cartels will always attack. So as we take off these record quantities of fentanyl, they'll do different things, whether it's in their transportation routes, where they decide to house and store their drugs.
Harm reduction specialists have a different perspective. I spoke with Lisa Rayville, who works at the Harm Reduction Action Center, an organization focused on preventing overdose deaths. She doesn't believe busts actually lower overdose-related deaths. From her experience working in harm reduction, people might put themselves in even more dangerous situations to get drugs when a supplier is arrested.
On the note of the fentanyl crisis, it's become the leading cause of overdose deaths. What's the latest with that?
If there's one thing law enforcement and the harm reduction people agree on, it's that these fentanyl pills in particular can be really dangerous. Buyers don't know if they're getting what they expect or if they're getting a lethal dose. Just in Denver, there's been more than 300 fentanyl-related overdose deaths so far this year. And here's a sad detail. When I checked the city's dashboard early last week, the number was 297. And then by the end of the week, it had increased to 312.
We're losing a lot of people. We're on the front lines of the worst overdose crisis we've ever been in. The grief is overwhelming.
But there are some positive markers in the fight against the fentanyl crisis. Nationally, law enforcement says fewer fentanyl pills have been found with lethal amounts compared to a couple of years ago. And in Colorado, the most recent data I've seen shows overdose deaths declined a bit from 2023 to 2024.
A trend we hope will continue. CPR's justice reporter Ava Kian. Thanks, Ava.
Thanks, Bazi.
A recent settlement agreement is the first big development in a lawsuit about trans athletes in Colorado high school sports. The districts that sued are calling it a victory for female athletes, but the organization that oversees high school sports says it won't change much. CPR education reporter Jenny Brundin is here to explain more. Jenny, how did this case start?
So the Colorado High School Activities Association, and I'm going to use their nickname CHASA from here on out, has rules that recognize the right of trans athletes to join sports teams that match their gender identity. The state has laws that allow that as well. But over the past year, some school districts in conservative parts of the state have been adopting policies that classify their teams by biological sex instead. They say it's an issue of fairness for girls. And that's in line with the Trump administration, which has said it will punish schools for following gender identity. But obviously, only allowing teams to be based on sex at birth, that runs counter to the CHASA policy and state law. So a handful of districts and charter schools sued the Colorado Civil Rights Commission, the Attorney General's office, and CHASA, challenging the transgender policy as unconstitutional.
And now CHASA has agreed to settle rather than continuing to fight the lawsuit.
That's right. CHASA and the districts said they'd reached a settlement that will let the school districts maintain their policies without being penalized by the sports association. But it doesn't require other districts to change how they handle trans athletes.
Is it surprising that CHASA would settle and agree to let these districts follow their own policies?
Not really. CHASA has had rules for years about the right of transgender students to participate on teams that match their gender identity. But it's really soft-played that policy in the past year, especially as the Trump administration has taken a very aggressive stance toward eradicating protections for trans people. And it called the lawsuit unnecessary and performative because it's never actually punished a district or a school for its gender policies.
I'm curious, Jenny, about how many student athletes could be affected by this. Do we know, are there many trans students competing in high school sports here?
Well, CHASA doesn't keep data on transgender athletes. So far, all we've had are anecdotes, and sadly, some false accusations from parents about some girl athletes who they think are boys. But I think it's safe to say it doesn't appear to be a huge number of kids.
You've reported that this settlement is far from the last word on this issue.
That's right. In fact, it's really the smaller part of the case because, as I mentioned, the districts weren't just suing the Sports Association. Their lawsuit is also against the state of Colorado. Colorado's civil rights laws protect gender identity. These districts want the federal court to find that applying that protection to kids' sports teams is unconstitutional. That part of the lawsuit is ongoing, and it could have much bigger implications because if it's struck down, that would apply to all districts statewide.
We'll continue to follow your reporting on this. Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you.
You might be familiar with the eating habits of giant pandas. They're famous for putting down about 50 pounds of bamboo in a single day. But in the hierarchy of vegetable-eating megafauna, pandas have some local competition.
In the entire world, the largest member of the deer family is the moose.
Moose eat up to 70 pounds of plant matter every single day. And that got one of our listeners, Rob Fisher, who lives in Silverthorne, wondering.
I was curious as to what environmental impact moose might have made, especially in, let's say, wetlands.
If you live, hike, or camp in Colorado's high country, it's hard to imagine a world without moose. But these magnificent bow-legged creatures were once rare here, until the state started a program to bring them in.
The new home for the relocated moose is here in north central Colorado near Rand.
That's footage from an old episode of the nature documentary series Wild Kingdom. It chronicled a 1978 effort by Colorado's Division of Wildlife to airlift a cow moose from the mountains of Utah.
The object is to establish a breeding population of moose in Colorado.
And it worked. Today, an estimated 3,500 moose live in our state, and it's one of the nation's few growing moose populations. But remember what he said about how much moose eat?
If you look at the area around us, it's like a willow graveyard.
That's David Cooper, a wetlands researcher at Colorado State. He met up with our climate reporter, Sam Brash, in a valley on the west side of Rocky Mountain National Park.
When I started working in Rocky Mountain National Park in 1987, it was just filled with these very tall willows, and there were beavers in all the drainages.
But that's not what it looks like today. The valley's a blanket of grass sprinkled with the skeletons of dry willows. What's left after the moose munched their way through here? And ecologist Isabel De Silva says that's not a happy place for other park critters to live in.
So we're talking about a pretty stark ecosystem shift, or collapse as we call it, starting in the late 90s.
The park doesn't have wolves or grizzly bears to prey on moose, and it doesn't allow hunting. So ecologists at Rocky are using a blunt but effective tool to restore some park habitat: fences. Inside a moose exclosure is a small oasis.
River otters, fox, great blue heron like to come here too, enjoy the pond. It's pretty cool.
The fencing keeps moose away from willows and allows other members of the animal kingdom to thrive. But it's expensive and tough to scale up. Habitat loss is a byproduct of the state's own success. Moose reintroduction has gone so well, in fact, that Rocky Mountain National Park is now writing a new wetlands plan. One option, park staff could cull moose.
It's just the worst case scenario. People appreciate the animals, but the bigger story of the ecosystem decline and what's gone on with it needs to be told more clearly.
Rocky Mountain National Park is holding an informal session about its upcoming moose and wetlands plan tonight. It's at 6 p.m. and it's open to the public. Reporting for today's show came from CPR's Sam Brash, and support comes from you, our listeners. It's the season for Colorado Gives, and when Coloradans give together, it's a powerful thing. You can exercise your power by giving to Colorado Public Radio at coloradogives.org. And to wrap things up, a moose fact you didn't know you needed. Moose and camels are distant cousins. In fact, Canada once had its own cold weather camel. If that's news to you, hit follow on Colorado Today. We toss in an animal fact every now and then. I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel.
And I'm Bazi Kanani. This is CPR News.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, offering convenient delivery and free pickup to help with the busy times this holiday. Online customers enjoy the same prices, deals, and rewards as in-store. Get started in the Safeway app or at safeway.com.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.